Alright guys, today we are going to do two things. We're going to solve for a specific variable and solve systems graphically using our graphing calculator. So solving for a specific variable is something we've done for the last 2 years, so hopefully this looks familiar. So in example 1, what's happening is that we want to get y by itself. So lots of times I'll circle the variable I want by itself so that way I don't forget. So what's furthest away from y on the same side that we want to get rid of? Well, we want to get rid of that 2x. So how do we do that? We subtract 2x from both sides, leaving us with negative 3y on this side equals 9 minus 2x. Now if we wanted to get y by itself now, we divide by 3, divide by 3, so y equals, and I'm okay with you guys keeping it as 9 minus 2x all over 3. Some teachers or students might actually do this as 9 divided by 3 is 3 minus 2/3, but this is fine with me. Okay, example 2. We're solving for y again. Okay, what's furthest away from y is this whole term. So actually, I'm going to subtract that whole term from both sides. So I get y plus 3 squared equals 16 minus x minus 2 squared. Next, we need to get rid of that square. So how do we get rid of that square? We take the square root. A couple of things that are very important. This becomes y plus 3. Now when we take a square root, we have two answers, it's plus or minus. Second, very important, this does not separate. Okay, we are not going to separate this. So we're going to keep it as 16 minus x minus 2 squared. The square root does not make this a 4, does not make this x minus 2. You cannot separate it. Now, the last thing we have to do is get the 3 over to the other side, so we subtract. And our final answer is y equals plus or minus the square root of 16 minus x minus 2 squared, and then minus 3. Sorry, you guys didn't see that. There we go. Alright, let's move on. It's going to keep getting more difficult here. So here we are solving for c. Do you guys see that? Well, I see that I am subtracting two fractions. So the first thing I might want to do is put a common denominator. So when we did this in the past, we asked what was each piece missing. Well, this c is missing an a squared minus b squared, right? And this one is missing a c. On the other side here, it's missing both a squared minus b squared and then c. But we also know whatever we did in the bottom, we must do to the top. So I have 1 times a squared minus b squared all over c times a squared minus b squared. That's that first term. Minus, well here we're multiplying up and the top and the bottom by c, so this is c times c is c squared all over c times a squared minus b squared. And if we multiply the bottom and top by a squared minus b squared times c, we get 0, because 0 times anything is 0, over the c times a squared minus b squared. Now, of course, we don't like the fraction, so let's multiply by the denominator. But if we multiply each of these by the denominator, they all cancel. Okay, so right now we are focused on, and I'm going to distribute that one out. So a squared minus b squared minus c squared equals 0. Now be careful, what are we solving for again? We are solving for c. So we have to subtract a squared from both sides. Then we must add b squared to both sides. Now we have to divide by a -1, so that changes all these signs. And how do we get rid of a square again? We take the square root. When we take the square root, it's plus or minus out front, a squared minus b squared. We are in the same thing we're having up here. You cannot make this a minus b, guys. Remember, the only way to get rid of a square root is if the whole thing is squared. The whole thing is multiplied by itself, but this is not. Okay, so you keep it as a squared minus b squared right there. Do not break that up. Alright, one more on this. We are solving for r right there. So let's talk about how to get that by itself. Well, the first thing we have to do is get rid of the square root. It's almost like a present, right? We have to unwrap it before we can take apart what's inside. So how do you get rid of a square root? We square both sides. So we get 3RT over m. Now, how do we get rid of the m? Well, this is division, so we are going to multiply. This mu and this m are two different variables, guys, so don't put them together. And now, what is happening to the rest of this? This is all multiplication, right? So how do you get rid of multiplication? We divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 3t. Giving us our final answer of mu squared times m all over 3t equals r. And I should have made that in uppercase T because I want to keep sure my variables are the same. Alright, let's go on to graphing using our graphing calculator. Okay, systems. So this tells you how to use your graphing calculator for each what do you call it? Each step. There we go. Oh my goodness, couldn't think. Okay, so if you were given two functions, what we're going to do is we're going to plug them into our calculator, okay, and we're going to take each of these steps. Now, what I want to tell you is when we find the solutions, all we need are the x values, guys. You do not need the coordinate pair. Okay, so we're going to do example 5 together. Alright, so in f of x, or for y1, I'm going to have x squared plus x minus 12. And then in g, I'm going to have the square root of x plus 6. I want to make sure that plus 6 is under the square root. I'm going to go to my window and make sure it's, I like always starting out -10 to 10 because I know I'm right in the middle. So let's graph that and see if I have enough space. And I do. I see obviously my two intersections are right there. So let's remember how to find these intersections. We go second trace, go down to intersect, and as you guys can see right now, I can't see my flashing point, right? So I'm going to press the down button And there it is. So what I just did, guys, is I switched it to the other function so it follows the square root function instead of the x squared. So I'm going to get really close to that intersection, press enter 3 times, and they intersect at x equals -4.187. I got one more intersection to do. So I go second trace, intersect, go to my other curve because it's easier to see, so press down, and then I get really, really close. There we go. 1, 2, 3, and I get x equals 3.414. And that's it. All right. Good luck practicing.